Good evening and thanks for joining us here on Capitol Tonight. I'm James Barragan. Tonight, state officials are urging Texans to remain calm amid nationwide protesting. Austin Mayor Kirk Watson is urging Texans to not become, quote, a tool of the chaos. And in Dallas, the local police say they're prepared for more demonstrations. This comes after the city saw hundreds of protesters demonstrating against deportations across California. Things were peaceful in the beginning. Protesters carried signs and chanted, calling for the end of immigration, customs, and enforcement. But as the sun set, police moved in and things started to ramp up. Officers pushed protesters out of the area using their shields and tear gas, and it appears that at least one person was detained. Over in Austin, it was a similar scene. Protesters marched downtown from the Capitol grounds to the J.J. Pickle Federal Building a few blocks south, which houses the office of Senator Ted Cruz and Representative Lloyd Doggett. Austin police confirm at least 8 people were arrested, and DPS arrested another 5, bringing the total to 13. The Department of Public Safety commented on the arrest on social media, saying the agency has zero tolerance for people disrupting public order. In the post, the agency wrote, quote, "Make no mistake, Texas is a law and order state." And Governor Greg Abbott is sharing similar sentiments. In a post on social media, he wrote, quote, "Peaceful protesting is legal, but once you cross the line, you will be arrested." He finished the post by writing FAFO, a popular internet acronym that uses profanity to say mess around, and find out. Tonight, we're talking to a man who attended the protests in Dallas last night after seeing the police response in Los Angeles. As the day turned to night, he saw protesters pushed around and detained by police and felt the sting of at least 5 rounds of pepper spray. Joining us is Reverend Clarence Ford Jr., a senior pastor at Christian Chapel Temple of Faith in Dallas. Reverend, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to speak with you.
Well, let's start off with your reasoning for joining last night's demonstrations. Why did you feel the need to join the protest last night?
I pastor a predominantly African-American congregation, and after seeing on yesterday, day before, the deployment of water cannons, the excessive force that was reminiscent of the history that we faced in this nation, I just felt compelled to be present and in a show of solidarity with our brothers and sisters.
And talk about what you saw while you were there, both from your fellow protesters and from the police. Did you see it as a peaceful protest, or were there moments of violence at some point?
It was a peaceful protest, and it was a well-organized protest. At the point where the gentleman protester was detained, I did not see exactly what happened between that person and police officers. But at that point, police officers, some of them were completely out of control. There were protesters who were verbally abusive, but I didn't witness protesters engaging police in a physical manner.
And you also mentioned that you'd been pepper sprayed by authorities. How did that all come about?
As they were taking down the one person that I believe that was arrested, that ended up at my feet. And I don't know if it was the wisest thing I've done on a Monday, tried to get other protesters to not engage police, to simply back off. And my reasoning was, the more they engaged, the only person who was going to get hurt was the person on the bottom of the pile. An officer came in completely out of control, began to shove and push other protesters. At that point, I did not want to turn my back. So I put my hands up and I said, "Officer, I am not a threat," and I started to back off, which is when he began to engage me with pepper spray.
And you mentioned at the beginning the callbacks to history. When we were speaking earlier, you talked about the use of fire hoses, and that's sort of what inspired you to be out there. You talked a little bit about the civil rights movement. How does that sort of play into what you're doing? You mentioned you wanted to stand in solidarity with your community yesterday.
Well, we're fighting for injustice, and, protests, the misquote from Dr. King, protest is the language of the unheard. His quote actually was, riot is the language of the unheard. We're fighting for justice, a simple justice, due process. We're fighting for rights that we are afforded, and all individuals are afforded under the Constitution of the United States. And this act by this administration is about fascist authoritarianism, not about the rule of law.
And Reverend Ford, we have less than a minute, so I just want to ask you, if these protests are to continue, what advice would you give to both protesters and the police that could help balance the constitutionally guaranteed right to free speech with safety?
The protesters need to hold to nonviolent means. We need to continue to stand. And the police officers, who are the professionals on the scene, need to learn constraint.
Okay, that's Reverend Clarence Ford. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, as we mentioned, this all started with protests in California, where a hearing is set for Thursday to decide whether the state will be granted an emergency order blocking the president's deployment of the National Guard. Our Cassie Simeon has the latest.
We are witnessing mayhem, chaos, and disorder in the streets of Los Angeles.
As Republicans returned to Washington on Tuesday, they took aim at Governor Gavin Newsom as the protests in downtown Los Angeles entered a fifth day.
The governor is refusing to take action to keep the community safe. Right now, the entire country has seen what his failed policies have done to our state.
When asked if Newsom should be arrested over the protests, House Speaker Mike Johnson suggested a different form of punishment.
He ought to be tarred and feathered, I'll say that.
Democrats said President Donald Trump's decision to call in the National Guard without a request by the governor was unnecessary, arguing that state and local officials had the situation under control. But on Tuesday, the president doubled down that his administration was left with no choice.
All I want is safety. I just want a safe area. Los Angeles was under siege until we got there. The police were unable to handle it.
Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi slammed the president's decision, contrasting it with his refusal to call in the Guard when his supporters swarmed the U.S. Capitol building on January 6, 2021, trying to prevent Congress from certifying Joe Biden as the winner of the 2020 election.
We begged the President of the United States to send in the National Guard. He would not do it, and yet, in a contra-constitutional way, he has sent the National Guard into California. Something is very wrong with this picture.
Overnight, 700 Marines were deployed for Los Angeles at the administration's direction. Democratic Congressman Mike Levin, who represents the Marine Corps base, denounced the deployment.
I can tell you that none of them signed up for what the Trump administration is doing right now. Our Marines did not sign up to repress civilians. They didn't sign up to be used as pawns in a political agenda. The decision to deploy Marines to Los Angeles is an abuse of power. Full stop.
A defense official told Congress Tuesday the deployment of the National Guard and Marines is expected to cost federal taxpayers $134 million and could last as long as 60 days. In Washington, Cassie Simeon, Spectrum News.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage. And click the subscribe button here. You can also download our app and watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.